Okay, so I did a quick short on the fact that there's people who bring in all kinds of smart devices into their home network, and it just opens them up to huge security holes. And apparently, the simple fact of the matter is that millennials and Gen Z have been so preoccupied and so engaged with being distracted by non-argument stupid things. Okay, they've turned things that are absolutely the most simple things that have been out there and turned them into huge oppressive arguments of everything as the world is ending. Okay, they've re-brought up all kinds of really old stuff that was already taken care of, and they're not doing anything. Okay, and they're distracted from things that were actually important. As a Gen X, things that were important were things like, yeah, not being spied on by the government, not being spied on by corporations. And today, with all of the little smart devices from thermostats to phones to this and that and the other, everybody's gotten so used to the idea that, yes, they're collecting data on us that they're like, well, people are just going to do it. They're going to do it, so I don't care. Just have all my data. I don't care. That's pretty dangerous. It's really kind of scary that over 20 years have gone by that they enacted the Patriot Act, which was allowing the government to do certain spying into things like the cell phones and emails and everything out there. Okay, and it was supposed to be just a temporary, we got to get bin Laden type thing, and it's going to be gone. Okay, it was a temporary, okay, this is an emergency, just kind of like the pandemic stuff was. We're gonna set aside a little bit to deal with this emergency, and then we're gonna go back to not having those infringements anymore. Okay, but the Patriot Act keeps getting renewed, and nobody's saying anything about it, and I find that disgusting. I think that's a poor thing to happen, and I'm looking out for my kid, and when you guys don't say anything, it's pretty sad. So one of the things that was going on is basically all your smart devices are spying on you, and the corporations are doing this, and the fact that you tolerate it is not good. You can stop them. Okay, you can stop these devices from reporting back to their thing and doing it. So I'm going to walk you through on the board here what's going on and how you're going to deal with it, and then I will go into a tutorial, if you would. I'm just going to do a simple way of setting it up using an OSIS router, okay, on how to do it. Every different router is different, so there's multiple ways to accomplish this based on how they've done it. And there are some routers out there that can't do it at all, which means basically you bought a really crappy router. So for example, if you bought a TP-Link router and you've got one of their little Archer routers, they actually have built-in Trojan horse reporting stuff on you built into their routers. So if you did that, then you're full on board with having everybody know everything about you because you bought a router just to do it, which is the device to block them. So what's going on? When we built the internet, we said, okay, we want to be able to have everybody be able to talk to each other, but security is an issue. And so we build these things called firewalls. Now, in basic essence, if you're running, and I've had people say, oh, not every gateway has, a firewall. If you're running a NAT, that's a basic firewall. It is. Why? Because they can't perform inbound connections without some type of work from you telling it, go ahead and do this. Okay, if you have just a NAT, which is where you have the 192, 168, whatever address, okay, when you have that address, that means you have a fake internet address. Your gateway has the only internet address out there, okay? And it's kind of like saying, okay, well, you have a home address and then you have multiple people in the same house. Well, you only have one house. You only have one address, but you have a little extra code that you can put on there so that you guys can sort the mail when you get it. Works kind of like that. So we would have our home and we'd have this firewall, okay? And it blocks everything from coming in on a remote request into your network. Anything going out, you can request stuff. You can still get viruses. You stick your head through the window and you contact Google. Yes, they're going to know that somebody on a Windows computer went and tried to talk to them. They're going to be able to get that type of information. But without that, Google cannot just go into your house, know everything about all the different devices you have, know all the things about you and your files and everything else. They're not in here, okay? And that includes when you are away from home on your cell phone, all right? Now, what's going on with all the smart devices, if we wanted, sorry, back up a second, when we wanted to be on our cell phones remotely across the internet, get into our houses, we had this gateway firewall, and we would have a security lock and key. This is the network version of lock and key, and we would open what was called a virtual private network. It's a private network. It usually runs encryption, all kinds of things. It's a tunnel. It's virtual private tunneling, if you would. So they basically create a tunnel through the internet, which knocks on the door, gets permission, and comes inside. So virtually, you look like this. You have a little tunnel that's created through the internet, and nobody on the internet can get into that tunnel. They can't get in. So you're virtually extending your little home's bubble to include this little chunk over here with your cell phone. And once you've done that, you're inside the network. You have full control. You can do anything you want. All right? Now what's happening is that they invented all these smart devices. Now the smart device is able to talk to your cell phone, and you can change the air conditioner settings. You can buy an air conditioner that has its own little piece. Your washer, your dryer, your dishwasher, everything has a little smart functionality to it where you can check the settings, check this and that and the other. They're hyping on a lot of things that don't need to be hyped up, and they're not actually providing you things that you do need. So actual realistic diagnostics on a device telling you this is the exact part that broke, yeah, they're not doing that. Okay, that's the important stuff, but that's not what they're doing. They just want to give you the look of thinking, oh, I can see that my washer's on here. Great. Who gives a shit? I'm still walking over to my washer. Okay? A lot of this stuff doesn't need to be smart. It's just ridiculous. It's just there to look pretty and feel nice. Having a thermostat that you can sit there and do is kind of a nicety. One of the ones recently is the 3D printers. Now this is kind of handy because you kind of have to watch those 3D printers. And the 3D printers know this, so they actually started building cameras into them, so you can check on your 3D print and go, okay, is it still printed? Oh no, the filament did this thing, I gotta stop it. I'm not gonna waste, umpteen amount of dollars in filament. I need to know, and I don't want to sit here and stare at a damn printer all day to make sure that it prints correct, because those prints can take days to print sometimes, okay, if it's big enough. I mean, even just a small print could take 4 or 5 hours sometimes. Bamboo's really big on trying to basically collect a lot of data from people, because they have one that essentially opens up a connection to their servers, and they tell you they're doing this so that they can give your phone remote access to the device. And they do this with the thermostats as well. And what they're doing is you have your home, here's the internet, you put a device in here, and they're having you purchase and install what we call a Trojan horse, okay? They're trying to make it so that this Trojan horse dials out. Now remember what I said? They can't come in, but they could dial out and that's where you can get infected. That's where you can get problems. You install it in your network and then dial out through your firewall. So now there's an opening. They're wedging it open back home to them. And they say, okay, well, if your cell phone is out on the network, you can talk to us. And we have to verify with you, and you have to have an account and so forth, because we want to make sure that we're not giving you access to somebody else's thermostat or you access to something else. And it's like, we've had VPNs forever and a day, okay? My wife used to use a VPN, okay? Think about how old that is. She used a VPN to VPN into school back when she was, studying to be a doctor. No, you had to do all that stuff, okay? We've been using VPNs forever. That's the secure way of doing it. You have a device, it securely enters, it has permissions, good. Now you have access inside. You do not open up this and just let it open up a connection to some random server or to some other corporation and trust them. Do you have a partnership with them? Do you have something with them? No. And if you did, you'd actually open a virtual tunnel to them. But no, they're not doing that. They're doing this as a back door. This is a Trojan horse back door. It calls into their network. Now, a lot of people will sit there and say, okay, well, they're not going to do anything funny. They're just doing it so that you can manage the thing. I don't need them to go in between. You're actually, if you think about this from a civil rights perspective, okay, what they've done is you have to ask them permission to change the thermostat in your house. And then they change the setting and temperature. I'm not asking some thermostat company permission on how hot my house can be. I don't like the idea that they are having it reported, especially when a lot of these thermostat companies, I got one. It's an ecobee. I went and looked it up and did all this stuff. You know how I got this? For free. My power company sent them out and said, we'll send you a free one. We'll send you a free one. Why? Because it cracks a door open and it gives them access in my house all the time. Would you sit there and say, yes, I'm going to let the cops walk into my house anytime I want? Anytime they want. They want to come over, they can walk in and do this. I've seen people with HOAs that they have to give a key to their HOA. I don't know how you can live like that. Okay? If you want to live like that and that's what you want to do, you want to give everybody else access to your home and the HOA and Samsung and all that, go live your life like that. You don't need to be watching the video. You can just go do that. That's fine. But there's a lot of people, you know what? We know what happens in the end when you start letting that stuff go on. And this is just another baby step towards allowing them to take control of your life. What happens when they say, you know what? I don't want you being able to set your thermostat higher. We're already talking about electric cars and it having a huge drain on the network. What happens when they sit there and say, you know what, we need to shut down these air conditioners because, we're having too much drain. We don't want you driving your car more than 40 hours a week, so we're just going to shut you off after 40 miles. All of a sudden they start dictating what you can and can't do with the property that you purchased. So you're asking them permission to go set this stuff, and meanwhile they have direct access. Now this can sound they aren't trying to do that. They're not doing this. They know that people would have a fit. Yeah, they know that people would have a fit. They also said that, using different pronouns wouldn't be a big deal, and that doesn't mean they're going after your kids, and it doesn't mean they're trying to show kids dirty books in school, and it doesn't mean that they're trying to do this and that and the other, and the next thing you know, you've got all these places that are doing that. It's baby steps, and they tell you they're not going to do this, and then they do it. They set out the rumor to say, oh, no, they're not going to do it, and then they do. The simple thing is this: even if they have all the altruistic beliefs in the world, do you honestly believe that there are not bad guys out there? Do you not think that a bad guy is not going to sit there and say, okay, did you know that if we pop over to the TP-Link network or the Samsung network or the so-and-so network and we get in there and we get an update, guess what? Getting chalk in my throat. Now we can set up a little piece so that when the device comes over here and checks for this and that and the other, it's going to automatically download a code update that sends that information to us. So now it's opening up a connection to us, the bad guys. And now that we have connection to that device, now, okay, Arduino guys here, get in the comments and back me up on this. You can remote install new firmware on those devices all you want, okay, right there, and say, okay, I've got network connection. Well, let's change out your network settings. Let's do this. Do me a favor. We're going to add a packet sniffer here, and we're going to start pulling everybody's data. Once they find out if you have a server or if you have cell phones, now they're hacking into your cell phones. You're giving them access in. It's like sitting there and saying, okay, I have a door lock on my house, but are you not using it? Do you never lock the door on your house? If you live in a great neighborhood where you don't have to worry about that, great. But when it comes to the internet, you're on the world network, okay? It's called the World Wide Web for a reason. Everybody on the web is your next door neighbor. That includes the crack dealers, it includes the warmongers, it includes everybody. So, what they're doing is they're creating a backdoor into your house so that they can get access to it. Whether they have good intentions or not, that's not good, okay? Now, how do you block this? I'm going to go ahead and go over this, and there's multiple ways of doing it. But the basic way to stop all of these devices from doing anything funny is to basically say, in my house, I'm going to have devices, and I have a connection to the internet, and I have computers, I have whatever, I have my cell phone, and when I'm local on my Wi-Fi, when I'm local here, or if I've VPN'd in, okay, if I've created a virtual private connection into my house and I know it's secure, then I'm securely, virtually in my house, even though I'm away. I have full access inside my house. That means all machines can talk to any other machine inside the house, but a certain set of machines cannot communicate to the internet. I do not need my refrigerator or my thermostat talking to the internet. It doesn't need to look up Google, doesn't need to go find out what recipe is this and that and the other. I can do that myself. I can do it on my cell phone. And yes, you have stuff on your cell phone that does that, which, by the way, I am talking with NetGuard and other people on how to set up some blocks so that you're able to stop that stuff. But again, it also goes back to the government hacks that they've put into phones that allow them to remotely activate your microphone and remotely activate your camera without you even knowing and start listening in and collecting data. And the government's got that in there, and they've built all that stuff up. So some of that is a little hard to get past, but there are some ways, and NetGuard's got an interesting take on that. I have been trying to set them up and talk with them about how to make it more viable to provide this type of security in your cell phone on a per application basis so that applications are more securely locked down. What you're going to do is you're going to create a block area. Now, how to create this quarantined area of computers, there's multiple ways to do it. Okay, you can either separate them by wireless network, or you can separate them by the internal IP addresses, the 198, 192, so forth and so forth. And it depends on what your router can do. Some routers have certain functions, others don't. Some routers have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to block certain IP addresses from the network. You can have a nice little wired firewall that allows you to do that, where you have it separate from your access points. Those will typically have that type of situation. If you're running a gateway that is providing both your wireless internet and access to wired connections, and then also being the connection to the internet, typically they block it by wireless connection itself. They don't necessarily have it the other way. But we'll go through that when I get into the routers. So again, if your one way is to create a wireless IoT network. Now, this can also be handy because one of the things that I like to do is I like to hide my network. I go in and I do not broadcast my SSID. Why? Because it's like having lights on the outside of your house. Who are the burglars going to try to get into? If somebody's running around my network trying to hack in, the whole reason you have WEPA security or any of those security, regardless of how stupid they are, okay, regardless of how minuscule that security is, I got a padlock here. It's not Fort Knox. I'm not blocking up my house with a thing. You're using WEP. It's minimal level of security just to block this, but you're using it, aren't you? Well, it's nice to not have 1,000,000 different neighbors all showing up when you're doing network scans. Unfortunately, with IoT devices, okay, IoT is smart devices. It's called Internet of Things. It's a little acronym that they like to use. I'm going to sit there and say IoT a lot, so I want to make sure everybody understands when I say IoT, I'm talking about Internet of Things, smart devices, whether it's your thermostat or your printers or your refrigerator, your washer and dryer. The wireless network option is a very good one, okay? I actually use multiple, but I do that because I don't like to broadcast my network out, okay? All of these IoT devices, they really don't like not using a network that is both broadcasting it and using security. So if you have a network that you disabled security, it won't work with those ones either. A lot of times you're going to find smart devices that their network connection just doesn't work. There's a bunch of like smart plugs. They don't work, okay? The chip they use is like the ESP32s, and it's got kind of limited functionality for getting on the internet and getting network availability. So what you want to do is you'll create, say, pick a name because you know somebody's going to have it. You can have My IoT, or you can have, you know, the Terminator Network or something, okay? Just name it something else. You're going to put some kind of security on it in order for them, we're going to call this the Terminator security. The Terminator Network. These pieces will not have access to the internet. Now, OSIS is kind of cool because they actually, on theirs, they will allow you to set up multiple networks on your wireless gateway, okay? And they actually have an option to you just check it and say, don't allow access to the internet. Great little thing, because they were expecting things like IoT. They know and respect security of a home. Places like TP-Link, they don't. TP-Link not only does not respect security protocols and things like this, they actually build Trojan horses into their wireless routers to where they report back to TP-Link all the stuff that's going on in your house, which is really bad because I actually checked this. Even though they have a checkbox that says, you know, opt out of user experience, you know, data collection stuff, even if you uncheck that, it's still sending data back to them. Okay? They literally, it doesn't even matter that you tell them don't do it, they'll still do it. Okay? TP-Link is that bad. So make sure you get a router that's secure. Again, if you don't care about security and you don't care about, you know, you're going to leave the doors unlocked, let them all have whatever they want, then go ahead and use it. Okay? But you can create yourself your little Terminator network. Okay? You can even call it Skynet. Damn, I should have done that. Call it Skynet. What you're going to do is block it from the internet. Now, the next way, so then you have your home network, and this is allowed to get access to the internet. All this is doing is saying when these come here, it will not relay out. When it comes through here, I will relay out. If I want to go back to here or go to here or talk this way, you can talk all you want. Just these ones aren't allowed through this gateway. Another way to do that is, and some devices don't support this, is using static addresses versus DHCP. DHCP is a dynamic host control protocol for automatic assignment of your IP addresses. Your gateway will sit there and say, okay, I'm not going to use actual IP address numbers because they're too long to blab out right here on the thing. But you would have IP1, IP2, IP3, and all these different devices that want to go out. And one of the parts of the address is the name of the address, your subnet mask that basically says we're using this to be the name of the network, and this part of it is how many machines are on the network. So this is, your specific name. Think of it like zip codes. Okay, your zip code is 94302 dash, and then there's a 5-digit thing, 94302. That would be your post office, and then the 5-digit extension, that's the exact house in that area that you are. So it's defining what part is the zip code and what part is the 5-digit extension. That's the subnet mask in a nutshell. So you have that, and then you have the address, the default gateway, which is the address of your post office. So if it's 192.168.0.1, which is an exceptionally common one, that would be the default gateway, so it knows to go out. Now, if you're statically assigning, meaning that you're not using DHCP, you go to the device and you say, this device is going to have this IP address, this subnet mask, this default gateway. You can deny it access to the default gateway by just not programming it in. By not programming in a default gateway, it has no clue how to get to here. It's still going to talk on the wire, and it will still talk on the switch, but it doesn't know how to get off the network. It doesn't know how to get to the post office to send the letter out. He can still walk to any house and find it and drop his letter off, but he doesn't know where the gateway is that sends to all the other post offices. So on those devices, if you put them in with static IP addresses in the actual device itself, but don't put a default gateway, now they don't have access to the internet. That's another way to block them. The third way is a bit more complicated, but it's doing very similar type of thing. It's where you're using DHCP to automatically assign the addresses, but in your little database table of DHCP up here, you go into your router and you say, I'm going to use 192.168.0.1 is the router, so it's IP address 2 through 254. We're going to hand out those IP addresses, and we're going to give them out to everybody in the house, and whoever needs an address, they'll get that one, and then they can work on the web, and everything's great. So one is going to be this, and it automatically assigns them out there. Well, what you can do, and it does it regardless of whatever wireless network you're on. Some routers don't give you the option, so the other option is to have a firewall piece, okay? And this is where you would actually have to have some kind of rules-based piece, which is what you'll find on firewalls, is rules-based, where you sit there and you say, okay, I'm going to assign in my database that when this machine, by hardcode MAC address, tries to get an IP address, and a lot of times if you go into your routers, it'll say, okay, here's a list of all the existing clients. You can select the client, or you can say add a static piece, and then it'll give you some options. Say, hey, is it already connected? You can select it from the list of all the existing ones, and you can do that. You can find it, click it. Sometimes it'll have the name, sometimes they don't get the name. It just depends on whether it's doing a proper NS lookup. But depending on how good the router is, you'll be able to find it, select it, and then give it a specific IP address. And that's when you look at your range and you say, okay, I'm going to say that all of my IoT devices are going to be numbered from, say, 200 to 254. So all devices will have this. We're going to hand out all of these devices, and the rest is for anybody. So if you have an address from 2 to 199, you, in the rules, get full access to the internet. For your IoT devices, you say these devices will have an IP of this, and then you can set up a rule that says if your IP address is one of these, this block of addresses, you do not have access to the internet. I'm blocking gateway access to you. So 3 basic ways to do this, okay? It's all going to be dependent on your software and what your router is going to do. I will do another video since this one's getting long. This is all of the theoretical pieces of it that's all drawn out. I will do a walkthrough of the AUSIS, which I have, and I may even do a walkthrough of what's called the WRT, which is a software program that can be installed on a lot of generic level routers, including the AUSIS. I can reinstall the firmware on it with this wireless router software. It's a basic set of wireless router software, and do whatever you need to do. So, and it has a different set of settings that I can use. I may do a second one on that one. So it may be possible for you, if your hardware or the software that came with yours, say you have a TP-Link, it may be possible for you to reinstall that router with WRT, which does have a lot of functionality to block IoTs from getting out on the web and opening up that little back channel, okay? So, it's been pretty long. Hope you enjoyed.